I am Alen Stellian, the Midlife Empowerment Coach, and today I am thrilled to introduce you to Katrina Roddy, one of our wonderful members. She's a Chicago, Illinois native who's worked for 30 years in corporate insurance before she was laid off. It was at that moment that she chose to take her acquired skills in corporate and created her own career as an author, entrepreneur, coach. This best-selling author of Steal Your Skills from Corporate will coach you through the mindset it takes to transition from employee status to becoming the CEO of your life as a new entrepreneur. So, Katrina, welcome. I'm just so excited for our conversation today. So tell us a little bit more about you and sort of what obviously you were laid off, and that was the catalyst for you to kind of figure out what next, but what led you to actually become a coach in this?
It's really interesting. And thank you for having me. I appreciate the introduction. So what's interesting about the whole thing is that I never sought out to be a coach or write a book or, I think it's the same thing that I coach the people that I work with on is when you start to change your mindset, doors of opportunities that you never knew were there start to open. So as I was laid off, and after being there for 30 years, a little bit about my history is I started right at the age of 18, right out of high school. I started corporate, and I was in college full time, and I was working in corporate, and it's because the college I had gone to, Robert Morris University, was a very strict business school, and so my grades were stellar enough in high school for me to go into a co-op program. I wanted to go into this program and I wanted to do legal. I didn't want to be an attorney, but I wanted to do some type of legal work. So this was my start. And when I got in there were 30 of us in this co-op program. And of the 30 of us, 29 of them got a job at a law firm to help them. And so these were paid jobs. They paid us as well. And so the one person who did not get a job at a law firm was yours truly. I got a job in a legal staff at an insurance company. And so being in that environment in insurance, the HR manager was so excited because she just wanted to show me the entire company and here's what we do. And that's kind of how I got catapulted into insurance. But I worked full time. I went to school full time. And the beauty about doing that is that I came from a family that we couldn't afford education. We couldn't afford higher education. So I really wanted to go to college. And I recall one of the recruiters coming in and just stating that some of the corporations will help you get through college. And I'm always a curious person, risk taker. And I'm like, let me see how that works. And so that's how I ended up at the college I was at. And they I got through tuition reimbursement, was able to not have any student debt after I graduated with my 4-year degree. So that's how it started. And 30 years into that, I decided, you know what, once I stop, I've been doing it so long, by the time I turn 50, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to do something that, I really want to do that's fulfilling to me. Well, it happened before I was 50, but I took it as a sign to prep myself so that when I turn 50, I would always already be working in that space.
So you were already thinking about what your next stage were before you were laid off from the 30-year corporate career?
Yes, I had started thinking about it, but not in detail. I didn't know what I was going to do. I just knew that I thought I had time to figure it out, which I think most of us do. You think you have time to figure it out and you don't. And when I came out of that environment and I was, pretty determined, I don't really want to go back. Let me figure out something. So what I learned very quickly, Ellen, is that I had skills that these other entrepreneurs may not have had. Like, I do presentations. It was no problem for me to do a presentation. There was no problem for me to lead a staff, no problem for me to do a training. And I was doing these things. And it took one lady pull me to the side and said, honey, this is your job now. She's like, you're giving out free information. And that's when I learned that, I had skills that I had developed over these 30 years that would actually help me as an entrepreneur. I'm still the same person that I was when I worked in corporate. I still have the same drive, but now it's directed towards something else. And that's all I want to teach other people is that you have skills, maybe they're stored, but you do have them and you can direct them into the path that you need to. Use them.
Yes, I find that it's hard for people to recognize that. I mean, I would think, okay, you've got 30 years in corporate, like woohoo, you've got you know your stuff, but you feel like people have a hard time actually owning that they
Oh
have.
God, yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I could give you an example. One of my recent clients, she was in corporate. She worked at the university for many years and we were talking. So the first step when I coach with people is trying to craft their message and bringing their skills out. And so I told her to write down her skills, what she thinks she had. And she was writing down and then she was scratching them out. She's like, no, I don't think I really am that. And I said, well, and one of them was she put on there that she was a strategist. And then she scratched it out. And I said, well, why'd you scratch it out? She's like, I don't really think I am. Now that's her job. She does things and she strategizes and helps groups together. And so then I had to explain to her that the word corporate can be a metaphor for life. And I said, these are life skills that you've had. So this is what I spelled out to her. You are a single mom. Your daughter is at one of the most highest renowned colleges right now. She's about to graduate as a senior. And you cannot tell me that along the way, you didn't have to strategize about how to get her to where she is now. And then it clicked. Oh, well, yes, I am a strategist.
Yeah.
And so it's those kind of things that I help bring out of people. When I say corporate is a metaphor for life, I really mean that. And some people will say to me, well, what if I didn't come out of corporate right away? You know, there are women out there that may have put their careers on hold to raise their families, so they had to jump out earlier than they expected. Now their kids are gone to college, or they're empty nesters, and they want to jump back in there. These are people that I talk to and help develop their skills and get them through that transition to transition into doing something that they're more fulfilling to them.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. So it sounds like you work, so do you work mostly with people coming out of corporate, or are you saying you also work with people who have taken a break and maybe want to get back into the career, or workforce?
It's both. Because if you think about it, coming out of corporate doesn't mean directly out of corporate. You could have been in there at one point in your life, but now you want to take on a career. So it's mostly with people that are coming right out of corporate just because of the era we're in right now and being with the pandemic laying off a bunch of people. But it's also people who say, you know what, I need to go into a career that I want. I was once in corporate and I know how that works. And so that those are the individuals that I'll get as well.
Great. So what are some of your tips that you give to the people you work with? And let's focus on maybe women in midlife and beyond who
Yep.
have had, a decent career, let's say in corporate, since that's your sweet spot.
Yep.
What are some of the things you tell them to help them as they try to figure out how they're going to harness all those skills they have into their next step?
So, Ellen, it's really, really, really interesting to me because, as I mentioned before, when I start coaching people, I start with their skills. But what it taught me is that they start to realize their skills pretty quickly. But the fear of transition is what kind of holds them back. And because of that, I've created a company called the Corporate Breakup. And really, what it is that no one really focuses on the breaking up from corporate. So they focus on personal relationship breakups. You know, there are times people go through anxiety, they go through sleep disturbances, anger, avoidance. Well, after reading the study with the American Psychology Association, these are the same thing people go through when they break up from corporate. So a breakup is a breakup. And not only that, but it also hurts the people who are still left at the job. If you can imagine, like your team is gone now, you're still there. Now you have extra work, you have anxiety because you're wondering, when is it my turn? So I focus on that with individuals and I tell them, go through what you're going to go through. go through it, because you have to take ownership of those feelings. But once you get over them, I've created an acronym called, you have to make moves. And moves is an acronym for mindset reset. And a lot of that goes with exercise, healthy eating, meditation is what helped me a lot. Meditation, those are all the things that go with mindset, being open to new opportunities. And then we focus on O, and the O is own your own title. Be the CEO of your life. There's nothing bigger than the CEO. I get so many people who are stuck on, I was a, I was a, and I'm like, well, was it is two different things. So take ownership of who you are now, and that is the CEO of this company you're building. And then the V is value your relationships. I like to tell people, especially coming out of corporate, let's build you a personal board of directors where you have 5 people that are surrounding you to help you cushion through this transition. You're going to need these people, and they might be in your life already, but you've not identified them yet. And then the E part is evaluate your relationship with money. Ask yourself, why do you have the relationship that you have with money? Because it comes from somewhere. I mentioned before when I started college that my family we couldn't afford for me to go to school. So I had to figure out a way. So that's my job, and my talents have always been a problem solver and certain resourceful. And so when you evaluate your relationship with money, you're looking back at how your parents lived and how their parents lived and because it's cyclical. So at one point you have to evaluate your relationship and figure out, how do I adjust this to do what I want to do going forward? Yeah. And the last thing is the most important thing. It just falls last because it's an S, but it is share your story, be vulnerable. I mean, there are more people like you than you can imagine, and they're just waiting for someone to say something. And when I started to share my story, this is true. I came out of corporate. There was embarrassment. There was all the things I described before. I had anxiety. I had all of this. I cried for a whole year after I left. Even though I started something else, I just felt like I didn't fit and what was going to work for me. And it wasn't until I started to share my story, I started to open up about who I am, what caused me to do that, the feelings I was having, and then people started to hold on to that. And they appreciated it because they had a story as well. Yeah. So my tips for people to move on is to make moves, and moves is an acronym.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Makes a lot of sense. And it's interesting that you talk about being the CEO of your own life, basically, because that the title, the sense of the loss of identity is huge when you leave corporate. I mean, I was only in corporate for 8 years, but I remember, when people ask you, what do you do? Yeah. It's you'd love to be like, oh, I'm a brand manager at Kraft Foods.
Exactly.
But then suddenly it's like, you don't know what to say. It's such a common question, right? So how do you advise people to, to sort of be proud and own their new identity and not hang on to that old title, like I used to be,
Yeah, it's through messaging. And so use your background as a message. I don't know if you heard any of this when I described moves, but what I like to do is, because these people are corporate, I like to use words that they're familiar with. Board of directors, CEO, messaging, calendar blocking, sharing, all of these things that we use in corporate. I try to assimilate those same words into coaching them so that they can have a sense of where they are. As far as the whole title thing, it's in the message. Like, what's your message to people? What I realize with myself and others is, once your message becomes very clear, your confidence boosts 100%. Because now you can stand, like you just said, you can stand in front of people and say, I do this, 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 and this, because your message is clear. When you're still rattling around with what am I, what do I think I am, I'm not really sure that, people hold on to that. Your confidence level is lower.
Yeah. I just want to give a quick shout out to Linnell, who's joining us from Austin. Thank you for being here. And Laura, who says she's 34 years strong in corporate, I'm assuming. and working through it now. So she says to cherish the new you. And then Corey is joining from San Diego, and she
Oh,
says
wow.
she's in the house. So yeah, thank you, ladies, for being here.
Thank you,
Um,
ladies.
yeah. So talk to us a little bit more about relationships, because I find it is so important, and I'm just so glad that's part of your acronym to, you call it a personal board of directors, to have those relationships, to have the support of a team, even if it's a team of your of people you trust and who are going to keep you accountable, or however you want to form that
Yeah.
team. What are some, who do you think you want on that team?
So when I coach to have 5 people on that team, and of course, I go through a personal board of directors, but what you really should have is the first person should be like a master. This person, maybe you can't be in touch with them. Maybe they're a celebrity. Maybe it's a public figure. And when I think of this, I think of people thinking of Michelle Obama. Maybe they're in line with her values or whatever it is that draws them to her, or anybody. I'm just using her as an example. So that should be one person because you're following and you guys have the same values. And then you got to think about who's your champion. Who is that one person that championed you along the way? They're like your cheerleader. No matter
Yeah.
what you do, if you have messages to get out, go to them first because they're going to carry the flag for you. They're going to go out and they're going to do this. And then you think of the co-pilot, someone who's right there, someone who knows your job, knows what you're doing, someone you can call. Think about this person when you used to work. You go to lunch with them, you talk about your boss, you talk about everything, but they know what you're going through because they're going through it as well with you. And then you have an anchor. The anchor is extremely important. And I want people to hear this clearly. This person is never negative, but they are going to give it to you straight. There's no, like, this is a person that knows you, they know your personality, they know how you work. And so at one time they may come to you and say, I know what the champion's saying, but I need you to be real with yourself at this point. So that person's going to be really real. And the most important person, number 5 for me, is the reverse. It's actually you mentoring someone else, but you're learning from them. And I like to say that because I like to use my son, who's a Gen Z, as my reverse, because I learned so much from him. And it's because, not because he's super talented at it, or it's just his mind thinks different than the way mine. I'm all corporate. For him, he has a creative mind. So it takes time to step back and kind of say, hey, maybe I can learn from that. These
So,
people might be in your life already, you just haven't identified them.
and do you find, I mean, my experience with a lot of women is they are reluctant to ask for help. A lot
Oh
of,
God, yes,
you
they're
know,
ashamed.
it's hard. It's shame, or it's like, I don't want to bother anybody, or, we're so used to taking care of everybody else and being everybody else's
Yeah.
support. Suddenly to say, here's what I need from you. It's a hard, and that goes back to the mindset thing. It's
Yeah.
hard to move that needle.
Yep, it is. I do find that. There is even a chapter in my book that says, why am I ashamed to ask for help? And it's because everything you just described. But you have to understand, when you become an entrepreneur, it's a lonely road, or it can be a lonely road for you. You're in this by yourself. You tell people, the people that I used to work with, the office next to me, they did something totally different than what I did. The office down the hall from me, they did something totally different. When you're an entrepreneur, you got to do all of their jobs, and you
Yeah.
don't have people to kind of hold on to. So you have to start to create those people again. And you do that through networking, you do that through um, just talking. And once you start to find people who are familiar or similar to what you do, and maybe it starts with finding a co-pilot first, and then from there building out. But I do get that they're reluctant to say, I don't know. So when I tell them these 5 people, and then I say, hey, they may be already in your life, they start thinking, oh yeah, I do have a friend who does that for me. So it
Yeah.
starts there. And then,
Yeah.
hopefully that helps them branch out and get more people in their life.
So a quick shout out to Sam. She says Las Vegas is in the house, and
Ah,
she tells us we try and carry everything ourselves. Yeah, that's exactly what we're talking about.
yeah.
I don't want to bother anybody. I'm just gonna, But as somebody who has recently felt recently for a while, felt very overwhelmed being a solopreneur.
Yep.
I finally started to realize I need to like get some help. I mean, and actually hire some help at this point. So
Yeah.
actually, yeah, I just signed a contract with one group, and I'm starting to get going to get a bunch of hours each month to get some support, because I feel like otherwise you could just burn out so easily. I mean, isn't
Yes.
this I mean, I know it's a problem in corporate, but it can also be a problem when you're launching your own business.
Yeah, and that's a good point, because when I do pull people's skills and I start to peel it back, you a lot of times you can identify those skills quickly based on what was in your performance review. What were you good at? There are some things you're good at, there's some things you're not so good at. For me, I will tell people in a heartbeat, I am not good at admin. I could do it, but I don't want to spend my time there. I like to spend my time talking to people and getting to know them. I'm the relationship manager. So like you, I just had to put a contract together to hire someone to help me with my back room,
Yeah.
because I can't keep up. It's too much at all times. I don't care how much you schedule it or make your time available for it. Maybe that's not your strength and you just don't want to do it. So procrastination comes in and the burnout starts. So I agree with you.
Yeah. And Corey asks, maybe you'll help me. I'm not sure I fully understand your question, Corey. Do your clients struggle with valuing their work when someone is not paying them?
Oh, yes. So when if the person is not paying you for your services, they don't value it as much. Think of it this way. If you have a building that has a bunch of owners in it and you have one person that rents, that person may not value that place as much as those people who have ownership in it. They have blood, they have sweat and tears in it. So
Yes.
they value it a little bit more than the person who says, I'm renting, and if anything happens, I just move to another place. That's kind of how it feels when you get people who are not paying you, because they're just looking for the next Groupon. They're looking for the next deal. So they may
Deal.
not value it as much. And I'm hoping I'm answering this question correctly, because it comes up a lot. So it's more about putting a value on that, valuing yourself. How much is it going to take for me to get this done? What's my value? Everything can't be free. And I think people look for um, opportunities to take free things. I think I watched a special on Netflix, and it said, if you're not paying for the product, you are the product.
Oh, wait, let me wrap my head around that one. If you're not paying for the product, you are the product. What does that mean?
So if you think about people, like I give free webinars, and I give these webinars at a free cost because I'm trying to get people to buy into something else. So you
Yeah.
become the product.
Yes.
So if you're not paying for the product, you are the product.
And I think, and it's interesting. I think, particularly in coaching, a lot of us undervalue our services. We're afraid of the no. We're afraid, who does she think she is?
Yeah.
She's going to charge all that. And what I always say is, because I've had people question me about, like, they translate things down to, even though I offer packages, or I now lead groups, they put things into an hourly number somehow,
Yeah.
or they're going to get down to that hourly, and they're like, how can you be charging this? And that seems like a lot. And I say, I'm not charging you for an hour. I mean, you're not getting the benefit of the hour. It's not a matter of 60 minutes. It's everything that I have experienced and
Yes.
learned and figured out and applied and sort of honed with all my client relationships. That's what I'm bringing to that hour. It's not just 60 minutes of time. So it's really getting ourselves out of the mindset also of I'm selling my time, because that can be very, very difficult.
So, and it's dangerous. So if you sell time, that's what people will take. They will take and they will use your time. But if you sell results, people pay for results. And
Yeah.
so that's one of the things that keep me going is, I question, how much should I charge? Should I charge on this thing or should I not? But it's the results. Like, what results are you looking for? You're exactly right. If you start selling time, that's what you're going to be selling, down to the number. Whatever minute that is, that's what you'd be selling.
Yeah, no, it's a conundrum. And so do most of the people you work with are going from corporate to starting their own business? That's kind of the usual path that like
Yep.
I've, and what kinds of businesses are we talking about? Is it mostly services like coaching, consulting, that kind of thing that seems to be a good lead into?
Yes, it is, because these are the people, remember, if they're coming from corporate, they're using their experience. So here's an example. I have the lady I spoke about before. She's was in college. She worked at a university, but now she's a college admissions coach. So I walked her through those steps and how to set that up. I have
Yeah,
another individual who was a chef, but she really knew the business side of it. So she wanted to coach other chef chefpreneurs is what she called them, to create their own, make sure they understand the business side of it. So those are the type of people. I have another lady who was an engagement leader. So she wanted to teach parents at some of the local schools personal development. So schools hire her now. They have a contract that say, I have 5 parents. I need you to teach personal development so that they could work in our schools. So it's coaching them to coach other people.
yeah, no, and I mean, that's the beauty of, whatever many years you have working in a certain area, you have so many amazing skills that you can then turn around and apply. I mean, it is a different animal, so going from working for a company and everything's set up for you and there's processes and all that, to
Yeah,
then having to create something from nothing, right? And having to
yeah,
learn a whole new set of, how to set up your LLC, how to get,
yeah,
professional insurance, how to, like, all the business end of things,
yeah.
set up a website, all of that stuff. But so I don't know if that often is an impediment to people actually taking that step, because there seem to be so many things you need to do to set up your own business.
So, but I think a lot of them, because they're coming from a business, they understand that those things have to get done. So I give them a resource to get it done. A lot of times I'll say, you can also work with my executive team, the people who did it for me. So I give them resources at that point and say, hey, if this is something you want to do, you may want to check with them. I have a strong insurance background. So when we start talking about what do you need for your business, these are things I talk about, the professional liability. Why do you need it?
Yeah.
So I do find, though, this is something that's newly discovered. A lot of times they need direction because that's all they've gotten, including myself. When you work in corporate, you're getting direction. They tell you when to go to lunch. They tell
Yeah.
you how long to stay at lunch. They tell you when, who are your clients. They give you your clients. And then when you're on your own, you're free. You have too much time and you're like, what do I do? I'm supposed to be busy. I'm supposed to be working on something. But what is it that I need to work on? So a lot of times you give them direction and they take direction well, or they're task oriented.
Yeah, no, that makes that's absolutely makes sense. I also like how you talked about sharing your story and
Yeah.
being vulnerable, because I'm a huge believer in that as well. And I feel like when you start doing that, when you start being more transparent and open, there's a certain warmth, there's a certain authenticity that you're communicating that draws people to you.
Yeah.
When you really you're kind of letting it all hang out and people are really seeing you for who you are, and there's a connection that forms. You're real, you're human, you're flawed,
Yep.
and people like that.
I honestly believe that. That's why videos are so popular on these apps, is because sometimes you may catch a person's flaw,
Yeah,
and I think people, if it's not scripted, they're all about it. And when I said I started telling my story, I just started talking about, yep, I understand how you feel. I cried the whole year after. I know what that feels like.
yeah,
And they're like, you did? And so then they start to share theirs and you share yours, and there's some warmth to that. Um, it's just a lot of people don't do it. They're so caught up, and I'm not going to do that because it's a lot of it is focused around embarrassment, or like you said earlier, I don't know what title to give myself,
right.
or maybe they haven't found their niche yet, so they're like, people think I'm just hopping from place to place. There's no stability, and I want to show stability. So, I mean, I know that happened for me at one point. I was like, well, I started off doing this and then it switched to this and then it switched because it had to click. I had to go through a couple of things before it clicked.
And that makes me think about too, that you don't have to have it perfectly all figured out
Nope.
before you get started. I mean, I'm a big believer in action, taking action, and prototyping forward, not necessarily, I feel like I've had some pivots in, as I've gotten into coaching and honing my, who my ideal client was and all that. So,
Yeah.
that's okay. Like, right. You don't have to, because then it's like the perfectionism is going to come through and you're going to wait for a
Yes.
long time before launching your business.
Yeah. Absolutely. And it's going to do nothing but stress you out.
Yeah.
Constantly stress you out because you're trying to put on this. When I first came out of corporate, I started, I thought the natural progression for me would be to work as an independent contractor.
Right.
Because it's still under a company contract, but I had gotten to a level at the corporate job, the other corporate job that I was at, where when I went to be an independent contractor, I'm like, I can't, you're treating me like I'm 18.
Right.
You need to be here at a certain time. You need to do, and then out of all of that, they'll say, but it's like running your own business.
Right. Yeah.
No, it's not. So
Yeah.
I thought that was a natural progression. And then that led to something else. Still trying to hold on to, being an independent contractor. That led to something else. And then it was just, okay, I can't. I'm meant to do this. I'm free from it all now.
Yeah. Well, I could continue talking to you forever about this. You are such a pleasure to talk to and such a fount of wisdom. I love it. I'll also be putting Katrina's website, thecorporatebreakup.com, in the comments so you can get to know even more about Katrina. But I just love what you're doing. And I think it's so important for so many women who are looking for the next chapter in their work life after corporate. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate this opportunity.
And if you enjoy these videos, please watch for more coming weekly. Until then, be well, stay safe, everybody. See you on the next one.
Thank you.